Hello folks, my name is Logan and welcome to Captain Millennial. In today's episode we'll be flying a Citation 560 from Fernandina, Florida to Williston, Florida. Flight time is about 30 minutes, max altitude today will be 10,000 feet. I did notice, however, when I was driving from Gainesville to Fernandina that I could barely see past the hood of my car. That was because there was a thick layer of low-level fog that was covering the entire state of North Florida. But luckily, once that sun rises, it always burns the fog off, and by the time I got to the airplane, it was beautiful outside. So in the past couple episodes, you may have noticed that once I get into the air, I have everything set up and ready to go. This is especially important when you're flying single pilot and you need to stay ahead of the airplane. I go through my CRAFT acronym, which is clearance, route, altitude, frequency, and transponder. So today we are departing from Fernandina, which is an uncontrolled airport, and now that it is pretty much clear outside, I am able to take off and get my instrument clearance in the air. However, even though we won't have our clearance until we get into the air and get it from Jack's approach, there are a few things that we can set up to make sure that we stay ahead of the airplane once we take off. Prior to any flight, even VFR flights, I go through my CRAFT checklist. Again, that's clearance, route, altitude, frequency, and transponder. So it goes as follows. I am cleared as I've filed it, meaning I'm going to go set up the fixes that I've filed for my route. I will put those fixes into my GPS so they're ready to go when I take off. Even though that my route might change when I get my clearance, I still have it set up because a lot of times whatever you filed, they will give it to you. Not all the time, but a lot of the times they will. So the C in CRAFT is cleared, the R in CRAFT is route. Next is the A, which is altitude, which today I set to 10,000 feet because that is what I expect to get when I get my clearance from ATC, and that's our final altitude today as well. Next in CRAFT is the F, which stands for frequency, meaning our departure frequency. This is the frequency that I will contact Jack's center once we are off the ground, and they will give me my clearance. So I have that ready to go. As soon as I take off, I can just switch it over to either COM1 or COM2. Lastly, in the CRAFT acronym is the T, which stands for transponder code. Today, since we are departing VFR, I will set my transponder code to 1200, which is the VFR squawk code. Once I get my clearance, ATC will give me a specific squawk code so they can track me on their radar. I go through that acronym prior to every departure. It's really just a self-check just to make sure I don't miss anything, and I want to stay ahead of the airplane once I get into the air. Part of my checklist as I'm taxiing out is to make sure the thrust reversers work. So in a moment, you'll see me pull up the left thrust reverser with my right hand. There's the left. Make sure it deploys. There's the right. Make sure that deploys. Now check the emergency stow for the thrust reversers. They stowed correctly. And now back to normal. Today we're taking runway 22 for departure, and that takes us straight into Jack's International airspace. So we immediately have to make a quick left-hand turn to avoid Jack's International's airspace. So we'll just go ahead and follow the coast down, and once we get Jack's approach on, they will vector us either through or around Jack's International's airspace.
And Fernandina traffic out of Citation, taking runway 22 for departure.
Alright, here we go. Landing lights are on, ignitions are on, and pitot-static heats are on. Looking right, center, and left to make sure there's no traffic in the approach or departure corridor of the runway. Checking the engine instruments to make sure they're all in the green and no erroneous readings. Looking at the generators to make sure they're paralleled and the board is clear. Flaps are set to take off and approach. Rolling onto the runway now. Today's runway is a little bit shorter than usual, so we're going to hold the brakes, set the power setting to 94% on the N1 today, and then once we get to that power setting, we'll release the brakes and we'll be rolling. Looking at the runway to make sure it's matching my heading and that my heading bug is slave to the runway heading. Once again, looking down at my instruments, just making sure one last time they all look good. Holding the brakes, you can see me advancing that throttle to set my power at 94%. Alright, brakes are released. Airspeed's alive 3 times, all the engine instruments are all in the green and the board is clear. Rotate. positive rate, gear comes up. Landing lights are now off. Zooming out so I can see where Jack's airspace is, and you'll see me make a left-hand turn here shortly. With my right hand, I'm adjusting my heading bug to start making that left-hand turn. Flaps just came up to neutral. And again with my right hand, I am setting the autopilot. And then in a moment, you'll see my right hand come up, and what I'm doing is switching from Fernandina's frequency to Jack's departure's frequency to get my clearance. And I just turned off my igniters as well.
Departure November. Jackson. November. Just off of Fernandina, climbing through 1.8, looking for instruments to X-ray 60.
Squawk 3477, maintain VFR.
Squawking 3477, maintain VFR.
Alright, there's that squawk code we were talking about.
Well, radar contact 2 miles south of the Fernandina Beach Airport. You're cleared to Williston via radar vectors, maintain 2000. Stand by.
So I just had to disconnect the autopilot. He gave me 2,000 feet when I was already past 2,000 feet. I believe I was at 2,400 feet. So I had to take it off autopilot, descend back down to 2,000. Wasn't really a big deal, it's just a little bit of an inconvenience.
And you can proceed direct Williston, climb maintain 10,000.
Alright, direct Williston, climb maintain 10,000.
Alright, so he gave us up to 10,000 and direct Williston. So with my right hand, I'm setting my autopilot to go direct to Williston. So right now we're in heading mode. I switched it to nav mode so it'll follow the navigation. And I'm re-engaging the autopilot due to the fact that I had to disengage the autopilot. Now it's just smooth sailing, and let's enjoy this beautiful day for a minute.
Contact approach 124.9er.
24.9. We got the field site, we can go and cancel instruments with you.
Roger, IFR cancellation received, radar service terminated, squawk VFR, and change advisory frequency approved.
Squawk to VFR, over to advisory. Williston area traffic, got a citation on it 10 miles straight in for runway 23.
Alright, so I got the field in sight. I'm on a 10-mile final for runway 23 in Williston. If you notice on my primary flight display, I have a approach chart overlaid my map. That is the RNAV for the runway 23. Now it's pretty clear outside, by the way. My flaps just came to take off and approach. It is pretty clear outside. There's no reason to do an approach, but anytime I set up for a runway, if there's an approach to it, I like to set up the approach just to make sure that I am lined up for the correct runway. Alright, we're getting close to the runway now. Airspeed checks, landing gears coming down. We got 3 green lights. Landing lights come on. Today it is particularly busy at this airport. They have what's called a fly-in. So a fly-in is the airport advertises this, and what it does is it brings in pilots and people that own airplanes. It helps, sell some fuel, gets the airport known to pilots. The airport provides food, so in this particular instance, they're actually doing a pig roast, which is pretty cool. I think they said they were expecting like 150 or 200 airplanes to show up. I honestly was expecting it to be more busy than it is, but there's still a good amount of traffic.
8605 Golf coming from the south, 4 miles away.
So this is a good lesson. I don't mean to laugh at this guy, but before you get on the radio, think about what you want to say, especially at a busy airport when there's a lot of people trying to communicate on one frequency. If you're taking up 30 seconds to make one transmission, you're going to piss off other pilots and you're going to make it difficult to communicate with each other.
And Williston traffic, Bonanza 603, Quebec 5 to the southeast inbound, left downwind runway 23, full stop Williston traffic. Bonanza 0 0 clear, 23
Williston area traffic, Williston area traffic. Got a citation on a 3-mile final for runway 23.
Okay, we are on a 3-mile final for runway 23. Ignitions are on, landing gear is down with 3 green lights, the flaps are at takeoff and approach, engine sync is off, autopilot is off, yaw damper is off, pressurization checked and set for field elevation. Only thing left to do now is to put flaps to land when we get just a little bit closer, and after that we are good to go.
And the Bonanza has the citation on final.
Roger.
500.
Flaps just came to land. Alright, doing just one last cross check just to verify that my landing gear is down with 3 green lights, my landing lights are on, my flaps are at takeoff and approach, the engine sync is off, the autopilot and yaw damper is off, pressurization is checked and set, and the board is clear. We are set to land.
Williston area traffic. Got a citation short final 23 Williston.
Alright, at 50 feet, coming to idle. Just extended the thrust reverser, speed brakes are extended as well. So I'm pulling back on the thrust reverser lever, and what that does is it reverses our thrust. It does quite literally what it's called. So it redirects that thrust that's going out the back of the engine, and it redirects it so it actually helps us slow down so we don't have to wear our brakes out. Alright, stowing the thrust reversers, there they are, they just got stowed. And the rest of my after takeoff checks I'll do when I roll off the runway. Now I'm just rolling this bad boy onto the ramp and I'm going home. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please remember to give it a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time here on Captain Millennial. Cheers, folks.
Williston area traffic, citation clear the active Williston.